Hello dear viewers, I hope you're having a great weekend. Here are major stories. President Gele left the capital to participate in the summit on China-Africa cooperation today. In Japan now, visit of the Djiboutian Foreign Minister Mohammed Ali Yusuf. It is nice to have you with us for this English edition. The President of the Republic, His Excellency Ismail Omar Guelleh, has left today Saturday early in the morning the country to the city of Beijing, the Chinese capital, where along with 53 other heads of states and government of the Black Continent, he will take part in the summit of the China-Africa Cooperation Forum. The China-Africa Cooperation Forum is a summit meeting between African and Chinese leaders. Its main purpose is to serve as a platform for two-way discussions to better synchronize their exchanges and collaboration for win-win and beneficial partnerships with their respective nations. It was created in 2006 and had its first edition in Beijing, the Chinese capital, and while he increased his visibility with his second edition that took place in Johannesburg, South Africa in 2015, he now sports with its current third edition intervening from September 3 to 4, 2018 under the term Build Together an Even Stronger Community of Sino-Africa. A full maturity, and it's now a question for him to apprehend the real springs allowing the two parties to anchor their relations in a form of sustainable interdependence. The third China-Africa Cooperation Forum marks not only the intensification of partnership between the two parties, and this phase is over, it has been marked by intense cooperation between the two areas in all economic fields, in particular in the specific field of development, infrastructure development. In fact, the Republic of Djibouti has been one of the African countries that has best benefited from the reorientation of Sino-African relations into ordinary bonds of friendship and cooperation with more focused links and placed under the sign of seeking win-win partnership for both parties. In addition to his participation in the China-Africa Forum, the President of the Republic, His Excellency Ismail Omar Guelleh, will meet as usual on the sidelines with the main authorities of the host country of this meeting, including the President of the Chinese President Xi Jinping, a large delegation composed of members of the government as well as personalities from the public and private sector of our country will accompany the head of state in this trip to Beijing, China. And concerning the last visit of the President of the Republic, Ismail Omar Guelleh, to China at the invitation of his counterpart of this friendly country, Mr. Xi Jinping, was on November 22, 2017. A high-level delegation including, among others, the Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, Mohammed Ali Yusuf, the Minister to the Presidency in charge of Investment, Ali Guelleh Abubakar, the Minister of Health, Jamal Al-Mukiye, accompanying the President of the Republic in this trip to China. The President of the Authority and Forest Free Zones, Abubakar Umar Hadi, was also part of the delegation led by President Guelleh in China. And more details on this visit, let's watch this following video.
2017 that the President of the Republic, Ismail Omar Guelleh, arrived in Beijing in China at the invitation of his counterpart of this friendly country, Mr. Xi Jinping, for a 3-day official visit. A high-level delegation including the Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, Mr. Mohammed Ali Yusuf, the Minister to the Presidency in charge of Investment, Mr. Ali Guelleh Abubakar, the Minister of Health, Mr. Jamal Al-Mukiye, accompanied the President of the Republic in this trip to China. The President of the Authority of Poor and Free Zone, Mr. Abubakar Umar Hadi, the official visit of Guelleh to China took on the appearance of a special honor that the Middle Kingdom considers to its most illustrious guests. They were well welcomed by the interpretation of the Jewish national anthem and the disbursement in full of all members of the Chinese government. The esteem conceded to President Guelleh as part of this official visit to China was also commensurated with the 21 cannon shot fired upon his arrival on the esplanade of the Great Hall of the People of Beijing. It's also the measure of Russian flag allowed to float the duration of the official visit of the state of Djibouti in China on the main artery of the Chinese capital. A shower of children from Beijing many primary school has also been mobilized. Through ingenious singing and dance playing for the occasion, this group of school children extended a long welcome to President Gele. All this protocol of reception took place on the esplanade of the great place of people of Peking, public building highly solemn and on which China is authorized to hold ceremonies that exceptional favor event of very high standing. It should be noted from the outset that this trip to China in November 2017 made President Gele the first African or Arab head of state to be invited to China on an official visit, following the reappointment of President Xi Jinping as Secretary General of the Chinese Communist Party and the Supreme Judiciary of the People's Republic of China. For Djibouti Ambassador to Beijing Abdullahi Miguel, this shows the interest of China in the Republic of Djibouti. This official trip by the head of state was marked by an important working meeting with his Chinese counterpart. The cooperation has existed for several decades between the two countries. The talks focus on defining the new discussion led to the signature of a series of agreements from the outset. The latter concern respectively a professional loan concession for our country, the provision of support for the housing policy enforced at the home, and the intensification of technical cooperation between the two nations. It was the Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, Mohammed Ali Yusuf, who initiated this agreement for the Djibouti side. Last state of his visit to China, President Gele went to the invitation of the China Merchant China Company in Shenzhen, one of the main megalopolis of the Middle Kingdom. China Merchant is a well-established company in Djibouti, where it was also an efficient partner in realization of dual multi-purpose port.
At the invitation of his counterpart from Japan, Mr. Taro Kono, the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Cooperation, spokesman of the government, Mohammed Ali Yusuf, made an official visit from 29 August to 1st of September 2018. The important delegation led by Minister Mohammed Ali Yusuf includes the President of the Authority of Ports and Free Zones, Abu Bakr Omar Hadi, the President of the Chamber of Commerce, Musa Yusuf Douali, and the Director General of Bilateral Relations of Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Cooperation, Mr. Yassin Hussein Douali, and the Ambassador of Djibouti to Japan, Mr. Ahmed Arwaita. A seminar on the business environment and investment opportunities in Djibouti was co-organized by our embassy in Tokyo and Japan External Trade Agency as part of the minister's visit, and more than 180 Japanese private sector business participated, along with some ambassadors from IGAD and COMESA countries.
And we are trying to advertise or to welcome in December the Japanese companies and CEOs to make the second edition as a special investment opportunities for Japanese companies, private sector.
We have a new fourth community system that helps businesses conduct their businesses in the most efficient manner. Competitive age, very important of course for businesses again, as the free zone is a tax-free environment. Businesses can conduct their businesses without having to worry about taxes. It's a very good opportunity for Japanese companies to come and set up their businesses there, so that they have an easier access to what the growing market of Africa.
If you are seriously considering growth opportunity in emerging markets, we were grateful to be here to tell you, yes, it is possible. And yes, it is easier than you think. Djibouti is a gateway in East Africa, and it has a lot to offer. Please don't hesitate to compensate and to be with us in December in Djibouti.
During his stay in Japan, Djibouti's foreign minister had talks with Japanese officials as well as the private sector and partners. The minister welcomed the results of this visit, which will strengthen the cooperation between the two parties, he said. Let's listen to him.
This is one of the best mechanisms through which the cooperation between Japan and the African continent has been very dynamic and vibrant. It has evolved from 3 years to 3 years. I think the first one was in '93, and now we're talking about the 7th TICAD meeting next year. The innovation in this mechanism is that there is an economic forum where the business community from Japan and the African continent can meet and try to plan for the future. What is interesting is that today, with these globalized economies all over the world, it's vital to integrate all those components. Not only assistance development, but investment has become more and more vital for the African economies. But what we noticed is that the Japanese investors are not very proactive in terms of trying to reach out to African markets. But what we need to understand is that the African market will be the global driver for growth in the coming years, and the Japanese business community has to position itself on the African continent. As I said, if they leave the vacuum for others, others will fill it. So it is quite interesting to see how the Japanese government, under the leadership of His Excellency Prime Minister Abe, is trying to attract the Japanese businesswomen and men to the African continent by providing incentives. Otherwise, I think the prospects are very interesting, and Djibouti in the Horn of Africa is really contemplating the arrival of as many as Japanese investors by the end of the year, because we are organizing an international fair in Djibouti, and we hope that we will receive and greet many Japanese companies in our country.
And for the latest news in the country, the 20th edition of the Adilu Friendship Inter-Regional Tournament ended today in the morning after 3 days of multiple competitions between the teams from 5 regions of the country with competing spirit and fair play. The different teams competed on various disciplines such as football, volleyball, handball and athletics. This tournament is organized biannually by the NGO IVA with the support of the State Secretariat for Youth and Sports. The long-awaited football final pitted Tijora's team against Ali Sabih team. The big surprise of this tournament is the premature elimination of the defending champion Obok, who has won this competition 5 times. Obok's team will be humiliated again against Adilu and will go out through the small door of the tournament with 0-point counters. After a fearlessly contested match against competitive Sejok's, the Tijorians negotiated the trap set by Aska's warriors. Despite physical engagement of the lady of all times, Tijora wins on the smallest margin and gets on the podium after 10 years of absence. The closing of the 10th edition of the Inter-Regional Friendship Tournament took place in the presence of the Secretary of State for Youth and Sports, Hassan Mohammed Kamil, Deputy Minister of Decentralization, Hamadou Mohammed Aramis, Minister of Communication, Abdi Yusuf Suge, the President of the Regional Council, parliamentarians, as well as several other personalities of the region. And among the officials present at the 10th edition of Adilu Friendship Tournament, parliamentarians were numerous at this event, and each one encouraged the teams in the region in a spirit of fair play. The parliamentarian Umar Muhammad Hamid congratulated all the participants in this sporting tournament, which allows the young people to take up these sporting challenges, but also allows to exchange, he said. And she sent a special note to the members of the NGO EVA and the whole population of Weimar for the success of the 10th edition of Adilu Friendship Tournament. At the end of the final, won by the Tijorians, Telecommunication Minister Ali Abdi Yusuf Suge thanked the 22 players for their commitment and fair play. He also praised the dynamic NGO EVA and the community of Adilu for the welcome they received, and especially for the good organization of the event that he believes successful. As part of its efforts to revive the third pillar of Islam, as-Zakah, and fight against poverty and unemployment, as well as to improve the living conditions of the most vulnerable social groups, the President of the Republic, Ismail Omar Guelleh, established in 2004 the founding of Diwan al-Zaka, affiliated the Ministry of Islamic Affairs, Culture and Waqf. The Department of Sponsorship of Orphans, Kafalat, is one of the most important components of the Office of Zakah, created at the generous initiative of the President of the Republic in 2007 with the celebration of the birth of the Prophet ﷺ, and this project aims to provide comprehensive care to orphans, particularly in the areas of education, health and other important areas. The Diwan al-Zakah Orphanage Department has made significant achievements thanks to the commitment and tireless support of the Head of State and the Ministry of Islamic Affairs. The Director General of the Zakah Foundation emphasized the great importance of this charitable project to support the efforts of the government and improve the living conditions of orphan children and allow them to live with dignity. Mr. Suleiman Hussein Musa said that in the year 2018, the Diwan has recorded a growth rate of about 15% in terms of the number of registered orphans and sponsored by individuals, companies, and local or foreign associations. Under the supervision of the Ministry of Islamic Affairs, this institution organizes every 3 months for a ceremony of sponsorship of orphans, and each orphan child of the capital or 5 regions of the interior receives 15,000 Djibouti francs. The leaders of the Diwan al-Zakah hope to absorb as many orphans as possible and intensify the awareness campaigns. In this regard, the Director General of the Foundation calls on citizens to participate actively in this project aimed at alleviating the suffering of orphans. Mr. Suleiman Hussein Musa to take this opportunity to greet the unwavering support of the President of the Republic, the Ministry of Islamic Affairs, in which allowed them to progress achieved by the various programs and activities led by the Foundation of Diwan al-Zakah. And on the news outside our borders, Mauritanians in last vote before key presidential elections. More with Hindi Ibrahim.
A frontline state in the Salis fight against jihadism goes to the polls on Saturday for tribal election that will test the head of state Mohammed Ould Abdelaziz's record 7 months before a presidential vote. A recorded 8 parties will take part in legislative, regional and local elections for which more than 1.4 million people are registered. Potential runoff election will take place on September 15. Aziz insists when he came to power in a club in 2008, he was elected in 2009 and again in 2014 for a second 5-year term. He has been frequently accused by opposition figures and NGOs of rights abuses, including the arrest of a former senator and the secretive detention of blogger accused of blasphemy. He has said several times he will not take a term mandate, something that will be against the Western African country's constitution. But the statement by his ministers and supporters have allowed opposition suspension to flourish.
Jean-Pierre Pompa appeals to the Democratic Republic of Congo top corps in presidency bid. More with Hindi Ibrahim.
Jean-Pierre Pompa lodged an appeal with the Democratic Republic of Congo's top court on Monday after he was banned from running in upcoming presidential elections. Pompa and 5 other candidates, including 3 for the Electoral Commission, late Friday. The move sent shockwaves through the country's vitality politic ahead of the twice-delayed elections, triggering hungry acquisition of a face. But on the night for the 6 Spanish candidates had taken their case to the Constitutional Court, the highest in line. The other 2 were accepted to floor by Tuesday.
And that's all for this edition. Thank you for joining us on Radio Television of Djibouti, and have a good night.